Hey, Pro Life Gen, it's Kristan Hawkins. First topic today, we need to talk about the critical importance of Christian engagement in the upcoming election. There are some alarming new stats that just came out. So a recent study by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University revealed, get this, that 32 million Christian churchgoers aren't planning to vote in just like a week, Tuesday, November 5th. The reasons for the lack of disengagement, for actually being a Christian in the public square, the reasons are 68% say they lack interest in politics. Tough. I don't know what else to say to that. 57% say they dislike all the major candidates. Yeah, but one of them is going to win. So what are you going to do? Just not do anything? And then the third reason, 55% said they felt none represented their key values. Really? I think that when you look at the values of the candidates and one who is for abortion up until the moment of birth, taxpayer funded, and even allowing babies who are born alive in abortion facilities to be left to die, I think that would be a key value for any Christian to be very, very concerned about. This group, by the way, of these 32 million Christians, the really scary part is this isn't like the group of folks that just don't vote every single year. They're just slackers every election. No, 20% of this group actually voted in 2020 election. So that means there's going to be less Christians, active Christians, voting in 2024 than they voted in 2020. Now, what's really interesting about this is, yes, okay, you have these always slackers. Now you have people that want to become slackers and they just want to put their head in the sand on the issues and politics and say, well, I don't like either candidates. I don't want to vote. But what's really interesting is you actually have this is the first time ever, I would argue, in American history, you have one candidate running for a major party, Kamala Harris, who not only stands against key Christian values of, like, I don't know, destroying innocent human life created in God's own image, but also has it displayed time and time again a clear anti-Christian bias. I mean, like, let's watch this video that was recorded just this past weekend, Kamala Harris at a rally when pro-life students shouted,
with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
So what you couldn't hear is they said, Jesus is Lord. And Kamala Harris responded, you all are at the wrong rally. And then the entire crowd laughed. And then she went on to, like, make fun of them, basically told them to go to the smaller rally down the street, which I guess was a Vance or Trump rally that was happening. Now, think about that compared to what happened when someone shouted at J.D. Vance.
Anti-Christian rhetoric and anti-Christian approach to public policy. I don't think that we've, that's right, Jesus is king, and I don't think that
we've seen. So J.D. Vance, who, as you could argue, has less political, it's true, has less political experience than Kamala Harris. Yes, he was in the middle of his speech. He was giving a speech. Someone interrupted to shout, Jesus is king. J.D. Vance didn't have to stop the presses or anything. He said, yes, you're absolutely right, Jesus is king, and he went on with his speech. Why didn't Kamala Harris do that? No, she actually chose to make an example out of these pro-life students and mock them, and then had her entire crowd join her in mocking them. That shows the instinctive anti-Christian bias that Kamala Harris has and has continued to have throughout her public career. Remember, when she was Attorney General of California, she actually sued pregnancy resource centers, PRCs, because she wanted to violate the First Amendment and force PRCs to promote and advertise for abortion facilities in our state, knowing that the reason why people start and launch and volunteer and work at pregnancy centers is because they are anti-abortion. Now, whether they're anti-abortion because they're Christian or another faith, I don't know, but a large part of being a large group of pro-lifers, I would say the majority of pro-lifers in our country would say that being a Christian, believing in a God who spoke the world into existence, who we know every human being is created in his image of, is kind of key to our whole worldview that you shouldn't go around just killing innocent babies. Kamala Harris did that as Attorney General. Then, when she was at the U.S. Senate, which, by the way, I think it was the ACLU recently came out and affirmed she had the most liberal voting record of the U.S. Senate, which when you have Bernie Sanders as one of your classmates and somebody working with you every day, that's a pretty big accomplishment for Kamala Harris, considering she wasn't even there that long. She actually, and I remember, I think it was like 2018, there was a hearing, it was on C-SPAN. Yes, some people watch C-SPAN, of a federal judge nominee that President Trump had put up. It was a man. And she actually chastised him in front of this whole committee, because she was on the Judiciary Committee, saying that he was not fit, not qualified for public service, not because he didn't have the academic or career resume that was required, but because he was a member of an extremist group called the Knights of Columbus. You know, those old guys at like Catholic parishes who do like pancake breakfasts and raise money at the March for Life. Yeah, he was a part of the extremist group Knights of Columbus, so that would disqualify him from public service, displaying clear anti-Catholic, anti-Christian bias. So, I mean, this is not like new for people who've been paying attention, but we always know people don't want to pay attention. Obviously, there are 32 million Christian churchgoers who don't want to pay attention. But this is massive. And I think we need, as Christians, obviously I'm a Christian, to remind every Christian we know that when you're voting for Kamala Harris, because you don't like Donald Trump's mean tweets or whatever, you're actually voting for someone who believes that people like us are unfit to serve in the public square, that we should have to leave our values, leave our beliefs at the door, that our prayers should only be offered in silence or inside of a church doors. I mean, think about what's happening in the UK right now. In the UK, and there was a video of this not long ago that made the waves on social media. The police actually approached a woman who was standing in front near an abortion facility. She was, I think, outside of the buffer zone, the physical buffer zone. But they approached her and asked her, "Are you praying?" And she was being asked if in her head she was silently praying. And then she was cited because she was silently praying. That is the level of anti-Christian bias that is permeated in the UK, the level of pro-life bias, that now pro-lifers, they don't even have the right to privately pray in their heads, displaying no outward symbols or symbolism that they're praying, just silently praying. I mean, by the way, this demonstrates the power of prayer and why Satan hates us, by the way, right? Just silently praying somewhat near an abortion facility can get you cited and potentially put you in jail. Sounds crazy, right? You think, oh, that must be happening in Jakarta or some random third world country with a despot running it. No, that is in the UK. I mean, I guess you could probably argue the new PM is probably a despot, considering he wants to go after people who have social media channels for triggering other, and that's going to now be a criminal offense. So, I mean, maybe that's what we've gotten into. But that is exactly the world that Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats want to bring to the United States of America. And that's what I've been saying for a couple of months. Obviously, in the pro-life movement, obviously, we have some very big disagreements right now with Donald Trump and some of the walking back he has done when it comes to our issue and ending the violence of abortion. Obviously, I am not here today to say that I believe and I support everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth or everything he types on Twitter. I've never said that. And our disagreements are real, right? Abortion is obviously a federal issue because your human rights do not get to start or stop at state lines. We tried that once in American history and it was disastrous, right? That's just obviously wrong. We obviously know the 14th Amendment, which is very clear that, every person within our country deserves the right to equal protection and due process. Not even citizens. I mean, and you look back at how they wrote, and the authors and the framers of the 14th Amendment, and why they wrote it the way they wrote it was because it wasn't just about ending slavery. They were prepared for things to come up in the future, right? And they wanted to make sure it was all encompassing. So obviously we have deep disagreements with that. Obviously disagree with the statements that Donald Trump has been making about IVF, about how he thinks that IVF should be, not only widely available, but then paid for in every healthcare plan. I mean, I don't think that's actually going to happen, because that's basically he's trying to like add on to Obamacare and another unfunded government mandate. That's just crazy town, right? I don't think Republicans are even going to go for that. And by the way, I don't even know if Donald Trump knows what IVF really is or what it really does. And, the reason is because you look at like Tim Walz, who's running for vice president under Kamala Harris. Tim Walz clearly said multiple times that he and his wife conceived using IVF. And then the New York Times, not a pro-life resource, came out and said, well, no, he didn't. Like, here's a man who doesn't even know what procedure they use to create their child. So I would argue that a lot of these politicians haven't dug into what IVF is, what the industry really is. And honestly, I don't think they want to know, which is why they don't dig into it. But so there's obvious disagreements there with Donald Trump. And I've been very clear about that. However, with all of that, I'm still voting for Donald Trump, and I've been encouraging pro-lifers to still vote for Donald Trump, because even though I have some deep-seated disagreements with Donald Trump, he is going to be 100% better than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the White House. How do I know this thing? Am I just like making this up because I have some bias towards Republicans or people who have orange skin color and I want to vote for them? No, that's not why I'm saying this. It's because Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have told us over and over and over again what they will do if they are elected. Kamala Harris wants to sign into law the Women's Health Protection Act. They say Roe 2.0 or just restoring Roe. Could not be further from the truth. That's an actual lie, because the Women's Health Protection Act would go further than Roe. It would mandate that every state allow abortion up until the moment of birth. So no state restrictions. President Trump says, abortion's a state's issue. It would no longer be a state's issue, because Kamala Harris believes it's a federal issue, and she believes every state must allow abortions to happen for any reason and any point in pregnancy, and taxpayer funded. And oh, by the way, if you're a healthcare worker and doesn't want to commit abortions or be a party to abortion, you don't have the right. You shouldn't be allowed to be in that field. Like, they literally believe that healthcare workers don't have a right to conscience. Don't get me started how that will dramatically change our entire healthcare industry. And be like, by the way, like, I have to seek out pro-life doctors. Can you imagine when every doctor you go to thinks that your baby can be killed and you're pregnant? You're like, wait a minute, I'm not going to go to a doctor who thinks that my baby isn't a baby yet. Like, what kind of doctor, what kind of mother goes to an OBGYN whose doctor isn't even seeing the second patient as a second patient? Like, hello, how can I trust anything you have to say? So there's obviously disagreements the pro-life movement has with Donald Trump. And there are things we are going to have to work really hard if he's elected to do. I think, one of the first things President Trump, and we should be telling President Trump after he's elected, is making sure he's appointing solid pro-lifers to key appointments, especially Department of Health and Human Services, their sub-departments, FDA, NIH, the DOJ, to, like, I don't know, stop putting pro-life grandmas in jail, which the Biden-Harris administration has been doing and continues to do. And then also the second thing we'll be asking the new Trump administration to do is defund Planned Parenthood. If President Trump doesn't think abortion is federal, then go tell Planned Parenthood to fund themselves, President Trump. They shouldn't be getting our federal money, because not only are they the leading abortionists in our country, killing 400,000 children every year, but they are also, by the way, if you want to make a self-interested Republican argument, the biggest funders to the Democratic Party. They're the ones driving all of this legislation and these pushes and these ballot initiatives. That is all Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, the ballot initiatives are very clearly being used to turn out Democratic voters. Why is there a ballot initiative in Montana? Why is there a ballot initiative in Nebraska or Missouri? Is it because suddenly these states are like overwhelmingly pro-abortion? No, the Democrats are using the abortion issue to drive out voters for very important U.S. Senate elections. So obviously there's disagreements, but I can guarantee you that even, with President Trump and his current statements, President Trump is going to be 100% better on this issue than Kamala Harris is going to be, because she doesn't even believe pro-lifers should have the right to exist. I wrote an article at the end of August. It was a memo to the movement. I put it in town hall. I tried to put it in sort of a venue that a lot of people would read it. My argument to the pro-life movement is that, our biggest threat, I don't actually believe, it's not really Kamala Harris or Donald Trump into the pro-life movement. Our biggest threat is ourselves, and are allowing ourselves to be silenced. In any social movement, the social movement that has most well-trained, most organized, and the most amount of people is the side that will be victorious, which is why, I founded Students for Life. This is why we work so hard, Students for Life, to build up this army, grassroots army of love, and continue to grow that army. But if we don't have the right to organize, if we don't have the right to speak, which, by the way, Kamala Harris and her cronies that she will appoint to federal appointments believe that pro-lifers shouldn't have the right to assembly, shouldn't have the right to pray outside out loud. How do we have a pro-life movement? How do we even continue our movement? We cannot allow ourselves to be canceled by Democrats. That means we have to step up and vote. And yes, that might mean you have to vote for somebody you have deep disagreements with, that you personally don't like, because guess what? Your vote isn't your damn Valentine. By the way, your vote isn't even about yourself. Quit being so damn selfish about this. Your vote is about millions of preborn babies who either live or die depending on who's elected president. So it's not about you, Christians. Quit thinking that this vote you're casting is all about you. It's a reflection of you or whatever. It's not about you. Get over it. It's about the weak. It's about the vulnerable. It's about those who are completely voiceless. And you're casting your ballot for them. So get over it. And do it soon, before our country descends into chaos, before we elect Kamala Harris, President of the United States. You remember when Jesus was a baby and Satan prompted the government, King Herod, to go and put out an edict to murder all of the babies? Remember that? The slaughter of the holy innocents? That's going to be nothing compared to what life will be like in a Kamala Harris post-Roe America, where not only the slaughter of innocents will be happening, but it'll be welcomed. It'll be championed. It'll be supported. We'll all be funding with our taxpayer dollars. And Christians across the country in the medical profession will be forced to participate in it. Next topic, chemical abortion. This is your friendly PSA from Kristan Hawkins about how chemical abortion is the most common, the most rapidly growing form of abortion, and poses massive risks to not only babies who it kills, but their mothers. And it's incredibly dangerous. And by the way, even if you live in a red state, you ain't protected from chemical abortion. So recently, 3 states, Missouri, Idaho, and I think it was, let me pull up the article here, Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas have revised and refiled a lawsuit against the Food and Drug Administration because they deleted, essentially, they ended the REMS, the risk evaluation mitigation strategies on chemical abortion pills that the Bill Clinton administration, the pro-abortion Bill Clinton administration, who pushed the approval of these bills, had put in place to protect mothers, that the Obama administration had revised and approved of. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the FDA got rid of all of these REMS. And these weren't REMS that were designed to protect babies. I mean, because these were REMS put in place by the Bill Clinton administration, who wanted to kill more babies, which oddly enough, now Bill Clinton is saying things like, we need immigrants because we don't have enough babies. But yet he's the one directly responsible for the FDA using an AIDS protocol to rapidly push chemical abortions in before he left his presidency in 2000, and is responsible single-handedly for millions of dead babies. But okay. So this new revised lawsuit, the goal is to get to the Supreme Court. Now, because the Chevron decision is gone, right? Chevron was this standing precedent that we had because of decision Chevron, the Supreme Court, that basically said that federal agencies were God and that they could make up and interpret laws. They could make up regulations that basically acted like laws, but they didn't have to get passed by Congress. The Chevron decision at this June actually was thrown out. It's now Loper has replaced it, which is massive for us because now the Supreme Court has said, guess what? News shock, federal agencies aren't God. They can't interpret laws the way they want to interpret them or make statutory requirements that are basically bills. So this is a really big deal in this new era with now the Loper decision, not the Chevron decision. So we've got to get back to the Supreme Court because if you remember, there was a case this summer the pro-life movement lost the Supreme Court where a group of medical doctors, APLOG, American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, and other doctors had filed a lawsuit on behalf of their patients, on behalf of women who have been harmed by chemical abortion pills, saying, hey, look, we went to the FDA, told them they should not get rid of these REMS to protect the lives of one of our patients in pregnancies. And they ignored us. And so they sued the FDA because the FDA ignored them. The Supreme Court came back and said, look, we're not going to rule on the merits of the case, but because we just don't think you have standing. And like the whole mainstream media went crazy and was like, Supreme Court supports chemical abortion. It's not what they said. They just said it was a technical standing issue. So now these states, Kansas, Idaho, and Missouri, have come back and said, wait a minute, we should have standing. And the case is really interesting because the standing they're arguing for is a little bit different. Instead of, like the doctors arguing, saying we're speaking out on behalf of our patients who are in overwhelming numbers going to the ER. I think it's like 1 in 20 women who have a chemical abortion will end up in the ER, things like that. They're saying they have standing because not only, they represent pro-life states. Like I'm in Idaho. Idaho has prevented all abortions now in the wake of a post-Roe era. However, abortions are still happening right here where I sit in Idaho because women, midwives, doctors, randos in their basements in New York State and California. One of these people I watched is a doctor and she recruited her friends in New York State. She was like on ABC or CBS. She was juxtaposed with me, which is why I remember watching it. She didn't even blur out her face. She's operating this back alley abortion facility, basement abortion facility where she's just selling abortion pills online and then her and her friends are mailing them out. So randos in their basements are mailing chemical abortion pills to women in states like mine of Idaho. So these state AGs are saying, wait a minute, our laws are being violated because the federal government, DOJ, Department of Justice, Biden-Harris Department of Justice, issued a memo after Roe fell and said that they were not going to uphold the law, the 1890s Comstock Act, which prevented the mailing of abortion materials, abortion education materials, or anything. And that's been the law of the land. Democrats knew it was there because they originally, when Comstock was passed, it included birth control. And then in the 60s, the Democrats revised the Comstock Act to exclude birth control. So it's not like this was a law they didn't know existed. They knew it existed because they amended it. But after Roe fell, Biden-Harris administration said, the Department of Justice, the chief law enforcement agency in our country, is not going to uphold our laws because we don't like them. I would call that anarchy, and negligence, treason, things like that. But whatever. So because the DOJ won't uphold the Comstock Act, these states' laws are being violated over and over and over again, and it's actually being championed and welcomed by the Biden-Harris administration. The states have also said it's hurting their state healthcare system because when these women who aren't seeing a doctor, they're not confirming they don't have a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy, because it used to be with the REMS, you had to have an ultrasound before you took the pills and after you took the pills. It was before you took the pills to make sure you weren't experiencing life-threatening ectopic pregnancy, because if you take the pills, you're having ectopic pregnancy. It's not gonna kill the baby and the pregnancy, and you still may die because you're having ectopic pregnancy. It's 5% of women who get pregnant have ectopic pregnancy. The reason for the second ultrasound was to ensure that the chemical abortion worked, that the contents of the uterus, so the human remains, the placental tissue, was all removed, right, through the period cramps, through the labor, into the toilet, into the bathtub, so she didn't become septic. Y'all remember the story of Amber Thurman that Kamala Harris, stopped everything in her campaign to go down in Georgia to campaign about, a single mom who died in summer of 2020 because Georgia had passed a 6-week heartbeat abortion protection ban. Act. She went to North Carolina to have an abortion. She got stuck in traffic, missed her appointment. The abortion facility, in all their kindness, said, we can't do a surgical abortion, but don't worry, we'll give you chemical abortion pills. Take these, go home. Well, she was pregnant with twins. We don't even know if the abortionist knew that. And there's a lot of people, doctors, that will say, if you're pregnant with twins, you actually need more chemical abortion drugs. But so we don't even know if she got more. But she went home, was laboring at home, got really sick, because what happened was she had the abortion, meaning the child died, contents of the uterus was expelled, but some of it remained. She didn't have to get a second ultrasound because of the Biden-Harris administration getting rid of all the REMS, and she became septic. And by the time she came to the ER, we don't know what happened there. They waited like 20 hours before they did the DNC, an emergency hysterectomy on her, which kind of sounds like negligence on the part of the doctors. We don't know her medical record. The hospital has been very quiet, so we don't actually know why they waited 20 hours. But time she went to the hospital, time they actually operated, she died. Yet Kamala Harris went down to Georgia and literally blamed the pro-life movement for this woman's death, when her administration is responsible for removing all the REMS. Interesting time period that you may not know is the REMS. Most of the REMS, they'd started stripping them at the beginning of the administration. And then the big stripping, the ones that allowed chemical abortion pills to be sold at CVS, Walgreens, and all that, actually happened in December of 2021. What else happened in December of 2021? 3 weeks prior, December 1st, 2021, was the hearing on the Dobbs decision. That day, anyone who had a brain, after you heard the hearing, read the transcript, it was very clear that it was probably very likely that Roe was going to fail, because the Center for Reproductive Rights attorney who had argued against the state of Mississippi and their pro-life law, it sounded like she just woke up in bed that morning and just found out she was arguing to save abortion and to support Roe versus Wade. It was really quite interesting to listen to it. But that is why the FDA moved so quickly to reduce those REMS. That's a little backstory most people haven't connected yet. So the states have said, look, not only are our state pro-life laws being violated, not only now are emergency rooms being flooded with women who are septic, who have incomplete abortions, who are hemorrhaging from these chemical abortion pills. Remember, like 15% of chemical abortion pill abortions actually won't be completed, meaning she's going to need other care. But yet she's not seeing a doctor ever. She's getting pills from some rando in her basement. And the third claim the states made, which was a new claim, and I'm very interested to see how this goes to the Supreme Court. They said it's because, quote, loss of fetal life and potential birth reduces, quote, potential populations of each state. That is true. That is very true. And as Elon Musk, who is sort of kind of just came out as sort of pro-life, has said, this is he believes it's the biggest problem our civilization actually has right now, right? Is the fact that women are having abortions at continued high rates. And our birth rate in America and across all of Western civilization has extremely declined, which is why Bill Clinton literally publicly, I still know why these people do these things publicly, said that, that's why we need illegal immigration, is because our birth rate is going down, meaning we don't have enough Americans, we don't have enough citizens, we don't have enough workers. I mean, just tried to go to a restaurant recently. I mean, we have to wait forever because everyone's saying I'm still short-staffed. So, I mean, these pills are deadly. They lead to injury, infertility, and death of women. They empower sex abusers, because sex abusers can continue to get these drugs. Anybody can write an email, send it to the rando in a basement and say he's a woman and pretend like he's having pregnancy symptoms and wants a chemical abortion pill, and then order up the pills and force feed them to his victim. Have you ever thought about that? These pills also are harming our environment. As we've been saying at Students for Life for a number of years, and as we will soon very publicly prove, these chemical abortion pills are basically allowing chemically tainted human fetal remains, placental tissue, pregnancy tissue, to end up in our waterways. And when they do, there's 3 active metabolites that remain active after they pass through the mother's body that are known endocrine disruptors entering our water. You want to talk about making America healthy again? Stop chemical abortion pills. It's literally that simple. Just wait until I unveil some information I have for you. my word of advice before our massive study is going to be dropped after the election is please stop drinking tap water and be careful of the bottled water you're drinking. Make sure it's not just bottled tap water, especially if you are pregnant. All right. So I want to talk about with chemical abortion. It's one thing I think for me to say these things like leads to infertility death. I can bring up studies. You can go to pubmed.gov. I often quote peer-reviewed medical journal studies when I talk about the complication rate of chemical abortions, the failure rate. But one thing I want to read to you is a tweet that Allie Beth Stuckey just posted this weekend. She texted it to me, and it's horrifying. And I think this is just one of the many, many stories that we have seen come from women who've had chemical abortions. In fact, if you go to thisischemicalabortion.com and you click real stories, you'll actually see a video where we took real testimonies of women online who were going to open chat rooms on social media posts and were posting their real stories of chemical abortion. We actually did a short video, and then you can download a booklet we made that has all of these just collected, unprompted stories of women, real women. Some of them are pro-choice. I bet many of them are Democrat, about how bad chemical abortion was. But I want to read this story that came in. It was DM to Allie Beth. This is from a labor and delivery nurse who asked that the story be shared. Hi, Allie Beth. I'm an L&D nurse, and I want the world to know what I saw today. I think it's what a lot of conservative moms need to move them over to voting for Trump. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. She said, early this morning, a mom came in and delivered a pre-viable baby by just a few weeks. So that's probably viability is 24 weeks. So maybe the baby was 21, 20 weeks. We did some digging after the mom was distant and didn't even want to hold her baby initially. Due to traumatic social events at home, she was terrified to have another mouth to feed. I understand her fear and hurt. She received mail order pills and followed the process. When the baby was born, she wept, crying that she had no idea that she was an actual complete baby. This actually speaks to that whole question. Sometimes people say, like, we should put women in jail who have abortions. There are still, and I would argue, a lot of women who have abortions who have no idea that they are aborting an actual baby because they've been lied to, and we've been lying to women for 50 plus years. She said if she would have known that it was a real baby, she would have figured out how somehow to feed another mouth at home. I mourned with her. I cried with her. I held her precious baby when she couldn't for nearly an hour. Oh my God. Until her heart didn't beat anymore. There was only one candidate on the ballot who was vouching for mail order on-demand abortion. Kamala Harris. These types of abortion are void of informed consent. If the world could hold that perfect and complete baby like I did this morning, they would never doubt that it's a life. That mom will never be the same. Quote, I had no idea she was a complete baby. This ballot is standing against evil. There are millions of lives to save. It just came in. She's right. She's absolutely right. If you could, going back to the earlier segment of the show, if you're a Christian and you were asked to hold a 20-week baby who was not able to survive outside the womb, a 19-week-old baby, a little baby girl in your hands for an hour because her mother couldn't physically bring herself to hold her, and you had to look at that baby as that baby is gasping for air, as that baby is surviving, doing all that her body can for a whole hour to live. If you had to hold that baby in your hands, watch that baby slowly suffocate to death and die, do you think you could then say, yeah, I don't like Donald Trump's tweets. Neither candidate represents me, so I'm just not going to vote. Knowing that the other candidate in this race, Kamala Harris, believes that this little baby that you're holding in your hands, even though she's gasping for air, even though that she's a she, has no value, has no meaning. How could you do that? How could any human do that? That's a problem with abortion. It's a problem when we say chemical abortion or it's a first trimester abortion. You think because you can't see the baby, because you're not holding the baby, that it's not a real thing. You mentally don't have to process. That's the difference between someone who says they're a Christian who isn't voting because they simply dislike mean tweets, and someone who's a Christian who can say, I disagree with this thing that Donald Trump has said. I disagree with this. I don't like that he did this. I don't like that he said this before he became president. Or he took these actions. Yet, I'm going to put that aside and vote for someone else. That's the difference between people who say they're Christians and people who are actual Christians and living out their Christian faith and are pro-life activists. Because to be a pro-life activist, to do this work, sometimes people ask me, like, how do you do this work? Why do you do it for this long? How do you not get burned out? Because I can envision that baby. I don't have to hold that dying baby in my hands because I see that dying baby. I see that dying baby every single day. That's how I don't want to get up at 5:30 in the morning and start my day. I'm not really known as a morning person. And I don't want to get on that plane, get up at 3 a.m. to get on that plane to be away from my family for 4 days in a row. When I have to take whatever criticism I take in a very public way online of a fellow pro-lifer who doesn't like something I said and feels the need to write a blog on it, and somebody who I thought was a friend, and take that criticism and just move on. Why I don't shrink away when things get hard, when the grant we thought we were going to get doesn't come through, when I have to lay off a staffer because we no longer have money to start Students for Life groups in XY state. Why do I continue to do this work when I could go do something else, less stressful, more money, less crazy hours? It's because I can envision that baby. I see that baby. That's the difference. All right, for the last part of the show today, I want to talk about something I said in the last segment about making America healthy again. You want to make America healthy again? End chemical abortions. As you will soon find out, and gosh, I am like the worst person at keeping a secret ever. I just asked my staff. I have some shocking information that Students for Life of America and our Dimitri Institute for Pro-Life Advancement, are two entities that the pro-life generation are going to be unveiling after the election. It's been 2 years in the process of getting this scientific research completed. But I have some information that's going to shock you. Hopefully, it will shock the conscience of many Americans when they think about chemical abortion. And even if they don't have a conscience and care about preborn babies, it might just shock people into rethinking their support of at least chemical abortions, which are the leading cause of abortion in our country, right? But probably next time we see studies, it'll be about 70% of all abortions in our nation, if not more. If you want to make America healthy again, stop chemical abortions. And as I said, please, if you're pregnant, stop drinking tap water, especially in high cities with high abortion rates. Don't do it. Get bottled water, filtered bottled water, water from the Swiss Alps, water from Fiji. I don't care what it is. Don't drink tap water or bottled water that's been tapped from cities. Chemical abortions are bad. Abortion is bad. It's bad for our women's bodies. Chemical abortions pollute the environment. But the other thing that somewhat gets talked about a little bit, I've been really excited to see Alex and her new show really talk about is hormonal birth control. And I remember a conversation I had with Alex years ago about hormonal birth control, because I think if you come into the conservative movement and you haven't kind of come into the pro-life movement, you don't actually hear as like a female activist in the conservative movement or Republican movements about hormonal birth control and how it's really damaging to women's bodies. But we're seeing study after study showing hormonal IUDs are linked to breast cancer risk comparable to hormonal birth control pills. A lot of girls will say, well, I've kind of gotten the memo that hormonal birth controls aren't good, tricking our bodies into thinking we're pregnant, taking artificial male hormones that we know, thanks to a Baylor University researcher, by the way, who isn't pro-life, that actually changes our sexual desires, our tastes in music, our tastes in food, things that change our brain. Which, by the way, would you believe that we've let this go on for so long? Like if there was a drug that we told men that they needed in order to be free and equal members of society that changed their sexual desire, do you think we would have gone 70 plus years promoting in our country? Like, would we have done that to men? Would men have allowed that to happen to them? Yeah, I don't think so. But so I think the word's starting to get out about hormonal birth control pills and how damaging they are to women's bodies. Like, yeah, we shouldn't be tricking our bodies and thinking we're pregnant, and then getting off birth control pills after being on them for 15 years and then trying to get pregnant. And like, why would you be surprised that you can't get pregnant, right? But some women have said, oh, don't worry, I'm switching to an IUD because now I'm not putting these fake hormones in my body. Well, unless you're using a copper IUD, which is like 100% abortifacient, unless you're using a copper IUD, which copper kind of kills sperm, and then IUD, if you do conceive, spins in your uterus, so it doesn't allow a new human life, a new human being in the zygote or embryonic phase of life to actually implant. Right? The new hormonal IUDs are like, well, we spin and we don't let the new human implant, but we also release hormones, fake hormones like hormone birth control pills, that will prevent the egg from being released too. So if you're using a hormonal IUD and you think that you're bypassing the system, you're not putting crap into your body, you sadly are wrong. And if you're using a copper IUD, if you're like going to go completely green, you don't want fake hormones, you're just using an IUD that can kill sperm, but then if it doesn't kill sperm, is 100% abortifacient. So just FYI, sorry to ruin your day on that if you didn't know that. But we also know there's cancer risk. Cancer.gov talks about contraceptives, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, liver cancer. We're also now learning there's a PubMed peer-reviewed article that was I just saw about autoimmune diseases, Crohn's disease, lupus, that there's a correlation between hormonal birth control and severe, serious autoimmune diseases. There was a recent tweet that Kamala Harris put out about birth control, trying to scare, once again, the entire like Democratic Party's agenda, and PR campaign this election season has been, let's just scare American women into voting for us and tell American women they're not equal in our society unless they have access to birth control, IVF, and abortion. And somehow that's going to be a winning strategy, which is obviously not a winning strategy, because if it was a winning strategy, you wouldn't see some of the recent pivots that we've seen from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But it's part of their strategy now, right? So her recent tweet said Donald Trump and his allies would limit access to birth control, ban medication abortion, chemical abortion. You notice they say medication abortion, by the way. They don't say chemical abortion, or they don't say abortion pill. Why are they saying medication abortion? Because people largely think medication is good. Enact a nationwide abortion ban. Simply put, they are out of their minds. Well, simply put, that is actually a lie. I actually wish Donald Trump would say he would sign into law a National Abortion Prevention Act, but he has said repeatedly he will not, because he no longer believes abortion is a federal issue. He thinks it's a state's issue. I actually agree with Kamala Harris. It is a federal issue. He has not said whether or not he's going to ban chemical abortion. I don't think he will, but he came out in Florida recently and said he thinks that preventing abortions when a baby's heartbeat could be heard is too early. So we're going to have work to do there. And he has never said anything anti-birth control. In fact, I've only heard pro-birth control things, which I think he needs some education on. So like literally, this was kind of my whole critique of the Trump administration, the Trump campaign's messaging strategy this election is, do you actually think now coming out and saying you're pro-choice or you're for some abortions is going to help you? Because they're going to continue to lie about you, which Kamala Harris just did, and no one called it. The mainstream media didn't call it on her. I've asked college students, Donald Trump now says that he's somewhat pro-choice. Would you reconsider your opinion on abortion and voting? You said you're voting for Kamala Harris because she's going to protect your right of abortion, but Donald Trump is largely saying he's pro-choice. Wouldn't you reconsider your opinion? And they're all like, hell no, he's a fascist. So it doesn't actually change anyone's minds, Donald Trump and GOP consultants. It doesn't do that at all. All it does, going back to the first part of my show, is suppress Christians who you need to vote for you. 20% of whom vote in 2020 aren't going to vote this election cycle. That's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big concern. Her statement, they're out of their minds, also goes into this fact that Kamala Harris apparently doesn't know the truth about how hormonal birth control hurts women's bodies. Like, this is a discussion that is actually happening, and it's fascinating for me to have on college campuses, because it used to be when I would say things against hormonal birth control, that would be like the most controversial thing I could ever say. Girls would be like, what are you doing? You're crazy. You're out of your mind. But now when I say things like about how hormonal birth control is anti-feminist, that is hurting our bodies, I actually get mostly head nods, even from the girls who've come to the event to protest me for being anti-abortion. So this focus on health, this focus on making America healthy again, is a winning strategy for Republicans, especially when you're trying to reach out to young people. And we're not as different or on far sides as people make us out to believe. I actually believe now, if you're trying to get young women who have been completely scared into believing abortion is like this savior for them, that they have to have abortion to be full and equal members of society. I actually believe one way to start the discussion with them on this issue is to do something we would never have said to do 15 years ago, which is start the conversation on birth control. Win respect, find common ground, see that she understands how much you care about women by talking about hormonal birth control. Because chances are she's experienced a side effect from hormonal birth control, or a dear friend or loved one has. Every woman I talk to, pro-life, pro-choice, Republican, Democrat, who is on a college campus about the dangers of hormonal birth control will agree with me at some extent that hormonal birth control is bad for women's bodies. It's hurting our fertility. It's increasing our risk to certain cancers. It's increasing our risk to autoimmune diseases. They will agree with that. So if you're thinking about how do I win common ground with someone, how do I, which is important when you're trying to convince them of like this worldview shifting thing, like abortion's bad. Do what we never used to do. This, honestly, like when I started in the pro-life movement, like we would never talk about birth control because it was so well beloved that if you talked about birth control first, you would lose them. Now it's actually flipped because of, what we've started seeing within the conservative movement, women like Alex Clark and others who are starting to say, wait a minute, I'm not talking about why I disagree with birth control because it could be potentially abortifacient. I'm not talking about the value of every human being, even that days old human in the embryonic stage. I'm talking about hormonal birth control being dangerous for women's bodies, and why are women being lied to? Why aren't we having serious conversations in our country? If we want to have an honest conversation about and how we make America healthy again, we have to do it by having an actual conversation about women's health over harmful contraceptives and political agendas. So that's a lot to think about today. I know it's pretty heavy. I'm sorry. It's always pretty heavy when you talk to Kristan. But thank you for joining me today as we tackled 3 really important issues facing the pro-life movement, facing America right now. I want to encourage you to know your voice matters. Your vote is your power, and it's not just about yourself. It's about someone else. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more insights and updates on the issues that matter most. I hope with this new show format that I'll be bringing you every week, you will be inspired, you'll be educated, and more importantly, you'll be motivated to get to work, to join me, to join the pro-life generation. So today, this week, your homework is make sure you vote early, and make sure everyone you know is voting and is voting for the most vulnerable in our world today. Thank you.